Hello, welcome to the Hammer Museum. I'm Claudia Bester. I'm the Director of Public Programs here, and I'm very pleased to introduce tonight's talk by Zheng Shengtian. Zheng is a scholar, an artist, an independent curator of numerous exhibitions, including the recent show Art and China's Revolution at the Asia Society Museum in New York. He's also the managing editor of Yishu, a journal of contemporary Chinese art. For more than 30 years, Zheng was a professor and the chair of the Department of Oil Painting at the extremely prestigious China Academy of Art in Hangzhou, just south of Shanghai on the central coast of China. He's a founding board member of the Vancouver International Center for Contemporary Asian Art and a trustee of the Long March Foundation. He's been a member of the Academic Committee for the Shanghai Biennial since 1998 and was a co-curator of the fourth Shanghai Biennial in 2004. And he now lives in Vancouver, Canada. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Zheng Shengtian.
Good evening. Thank you, Claudia. I'm happy to be here and to see Sun Yuan and Peng Yu's work displayed in LA. Once Jackson Pollock said, "Every great painter paints what he is." I think this may not apply to Sun Yuan and Peng Yu because their work always look very aggressive, challenging, provocative, but they are a really nice couple. I have known them since 2004. When I was a co-curator of Shanghai Biennale, I went to Guangzhou to visit the Guangzhou Biennale at the same time. And where I saw this work for the first time, the almost 4 meters tall pillar leaning on the wall. That edition of Biennial introduced a very interesting system. The curator invites viewers, just the general public. They select people from all over the world working with artists. So the viewer-artist collaboration become a special kind of a arrangement for that biennial. And so for Peng Yu and Sun Yuan, they invite a Chinese film director named Li Tian to work with them. So the viewer, during the whole process, he will comment on their work. But when he saw this pillar, this work, he was terrifying. He said when he find out this pillar was made of human ash, the grounded like a bone from the human bone made of those ash. Together and look like a huge chalk stick. Actually, that's the idea. The artist made this look like a student, the chalk you use in the classroom. Actually, they plan to use this to write something. Eventually, they gave up. They thought maybe it's better to not write anything, just leave it staying there. But anyway, that's my first encounter with Sun Yuan and Peng Yu. I saw their work in the from photos and other reproduction, but that was the first time I saw their work. And also I ran into Sun Yuan and Peng Yu at that opening. We had a long chat. I find they're really nice young couple with a kind of a modish, student-like style, really lovely. And furthermore, I find Peng Yu and Sun Yuan, we both study with the same professor, Professor Zheng Shengtian from Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing. Although there's almost a 40 years gap, I studied with Professor Zhang in 1960s. And Peng Yu studied with him in 1990s. But according to the Chinese the protocol. We are family. We are like academic brothers, sisters. So we decide to, one day we will go to visit the professor together. Peng Yu and Sun Yuan both studied and graduated from Central Academy of Fine Arts, one of the most prestigious art school in China in mid-90s. They had solid training in drawing and painting all the way from high school to the college in China, because there is a high school affiliated with the academy. Their names emerged at the end of last century when the society was changing rapidly from its socialist ideology to market and money-driving battlefield. Peng and Sun belonged to a new generation that was very different with the pioneers of the China avant-garde. The idealism was abandoned, and the core value and the faith of the society were missing. As Peng said in an interview, in their lifetime, they didn't experience any fascinating historical event. There was no great happiness, nor great sorrow. Peng Yu said that they only know what they like, what they dislike. So their work, early work, involved using the human body parts, which is very controversial, and especially there's two installations. One is Sun Yuan's work called The Honey in 1908. This is Sun Yuan and Peng Yu. So this is the work Sun Yuan showed in 1998 at the exhibition called the Postsense Sensibility. It was curated by Wu Meichun and Qiu Zhijie. Qiu Zhijie is the current curator of Shanghai Biennale this year. Also was in the, is in the short list of Hugo Boss Award at Guggenheim. But at that time, he was a young artist and curator. They organized this literally underground exhibition. It's really underground. They rent a place and they invite artists. At that time, contemporary art is still not allowed by the authority. So many shows, they only can do it like in the private space and not in public, and also it was never covered by mainstream media. So the curator ran the space and divided to for 20 about 20 artists. Each have a space display their work, and the show was only on for 2 days. The way they distributed the information is that they just make a phone call use a cell phone to call friends, and then when the authority find out that there was a show, it's already done. So it's only 2 days, very short. And that show was quite important because that marked some kind of shift in Chinese contemporary art scene. The early 90s saw a lot of painters, a lot of work, what we call political pop, or cynical art. But in the middle of 90s, many young artists moving from painting from this medium to conceptual art, especially using different materials to make installation. So one of the important show is this post-sense sensibility. Even from this name, you can see that the influence is from young British artist. The name was raised from London's exhibition in 1997, Sensation. So from then on, Yuan and Peng Yu, their name attract critics and curators' attention. This is Peng Yu's early work called The Curtain. It's made all of this lobsters, eels, all this animal body. In past 15 years, although they have kept working together as an ideal team, their works have gone through many phases, from dead body to live animal, from group performance to hyper-realistic human replicas. They also move forward from local Beijing art scene to international stage. Their work exhibits in many countries, in different events, including Venice Biennale, Documenta, and many other museum shows. I was surprised to know this is a Hammer Museum had the first show of their working in North America. I thought they were being introduced in North America, but actually it was not. I saw once in the Miami art fair a few years ago, but that was not in the museum, so that we still can call this the first show. So in the last 15 years, actually, they made such achievement that become most interesting and most important Chinese arts of our time. So now I will introduce some of their work. So this is the work called The Dogs Which Cannot Touch Each Other. It's very important work of theirs in early 2000. This start of 2003, but also shot in Documenta. This is an installation of live animals. They rented this 8 pit bull dogs and put in a kind of a treadmill facing each other. So it is like a 4 pair of dogs. You know this, I myself have a hybrid pit bull, so I know they're really tough dogs. They are always very aggressive. They want to attack other animals. So they put them together and stay in this treadmill. When they're moving, so dog make that sound and all this excitement. It was very interesting to watch. Here I will show some. All right. Yeah, this is another work they did about the same year. It's called Safe Island. So that year they used a lot of live animals. This is a tiger, a real tiger. They put it in the museum. They built this cage. You know, when you go to zoo, you will find a tiger has a habit of walking. If you put in a space, probably because the tiger is very upset, locked in this kind of space. So he or she is walking all the time from one side to other side. So the artists use this as a metaphor to show how people's life are controlled by some other things, So the whole exhibition entrance was built to this cage, surrounded by this cage. And the tiger was walking from one side to other side. And in the middle, there's a door. So when tiger walked to this side, the door is closed. The security people will close the door, so then let people enter the gallery. And then when the door opened, the tiger walked to other side, then they close the door, let people from other entrance to come to the gallery. So that's how they, that was a very interesting exhibition in China. Was caused a lot of discussion. The next work, which the artists did, the 2005, it was the year when Venice Biennale invited China to have this first Chinese pavilion. And Cai Guoqiang was the curator of that exhibition. And he invited Yuan and Peng Yu to be one of the participate team. But Yuan and Peng Yu, they didn't do any work. They invite a farmer from Anhui province. His name is Du Wenda. This farmer became famous in China because he made this UFO by himself and tried to fly to the sky. And but according to the reports in the media, never realized this project. It's only experiment for many, many years. But Peng Yu and Sun Yan invited him to Venice. They thought that this is a great project to do. And so the artist, the farmer was invited to Venice. That was the first time for him to go abroad. And he was working with Sun Yan and Peng Yu. They shipped this man-made flying saucer in Venice and tried to launch this during the opening. Unfortunately, it was not successful, never leave the ground. But the artists later wrote about this. They said, this was the first time that China had a pavilion in Venice. It was the first time, too, that Du Wenda took his saucer abroad. And for us, it was also the first time we participate in the Venice Biennale. So everything was new and fresh. And we like to try everything a bit. So we put different things together to make those things change a bit. The outcome was totally unpredictable. Just like we could not foresee our future. We still don't know yet what Chinese contemporary art will do for the world. So this is a quite an interesting project in that edition of Venice Biennale. And some people interviewed the artists, and Peng Yu mentioned he believed this farmer, this Du Wenda, actually is not a human. He is an alien, because he wants to go back to his home, and so he always tried, but he never succeed. And the next work is this called The Strongest Dragon Get Cross the River. It's another very interesting installation, inviting public to participate. I saw this piece in Miami in 2006. There was during the Art Miami, there was a show organized by New York dealer Ethan Cohn. He invited about 20 artists, in this special show. But the entrance was arranged by Yuan and Peng Yu. They put this soft sponge, like in this 1,500 meters space. All of this sponges. So people, when you get in, you need to cross, you need to go through this area. This is like a playground, like in a department store somewhere. You can see kids play like that. But this is a playground for adults, people. You have to pass through this area, then you will see the show. So if you give up, then you have no chance to see the show. And a lot of excitement there. The people shouting, crying, fighting with each other. So make this the whole exhibition is very playful, enjoyable. And this work, of course, you saw is here. The first exhibit in Moscow in 2007. When actually at that time it was also there was a crisis in the Middle East, so people associated. Most people were immediately associated with Taliban, with those terrorists. But actually, the artists are not completely focused on this, specific event. Taliban is like watching you, but it's in a deeper layer. You will feel there's someone is watching you, not necessarily Arabic person. It could be happen anywhere in China, in States, in any places. There's someone is watching you, or something make you scared. I think that's more than this specific kind of a political notion, but also there's a kind of a human feeling in general. And artists also did some interesting project. They may not call this a performance, but it's a kind of a group act. One of the this project called the bird hunting. Because hunting in China is not very popular. One of the reasons is that their gun control. In China, you cannot easily to buy a gun like a States. So especially people in the city, they really touch a gun or had the chance to exercise, to shoot gun. So this is a special project Yuan and Peng Yu organized. It's called bird hunting, because they believe that using a gun and go out to shoot, it's very special experience for Chinese. And this is like doing something illegal in China. He said that there's like some Islamic women walking on the street without the veil, something like that. You feel very exciting about this kind of a experience. And so they invite a group of people, mostly artists. They went to Inner Mongolia. Then they shoot birds and using different kind of guns they got from different resources. The next project called the Angel. From about 2007, 2008, they start to using this material to make kind of a really hyper-realistic replica of human. But this is not human. This is like a supernature creature. It's an angel. Then people think an angel is forever. It's like always pretty, have wings flying in the sky. But it never thought the angel could, if there's a look like an angel, look like a person, they could also age and become old. Then what happened with the old angel? So this angel is like is dying or collapse from the sky under the ground with like an old man, old woman's face, and then all the wrinkles, and the wings like has no feather. Really upsetting people when you look at this angel. The image changed to such hopeless person who cannot really give any help like people expected. And another work also they showed in Europe called Waiting. Is a vulture. We know there's a very tough birds. And they put, in several locations, they put the vulture on the high spot, either on the ceiling or on the other place, on the pole, the top of the pole, and looking the people under these birds. And because it's so realistic, it looked like a real, and there was the shocking image when you really see it. This is one of the my favorite work, which is shown in the Saatchi Gallery in 2008, called The Old People's Home. And the artist made 13 figures of all different, from different culture, different background, the military or politician or religious leader. Look like someone, but it's not exactly. But all these old people, like in their probably 90s or 100 years old, they are motionless. They're sitting there, tired. But they all sit in this wheelchair, which moving by itself, like in the amusement park, those are bumper cars. They are moving, so touching each other, but very slowly. And then those people, they are not talking. They are not. There is no communication. It's just really old, kind of a dying people. But when you look at their costume, you will, associate with all these very powerful leaders in the world, and imagine what happened when they're getting old, like this. So this is a kind of a very ironic image of the leaders. And last year I went to their studio. I took some Canadian collectors went to their studio. And when they find out, because they saw this work in Saatchi Gallery before, and when they find out that this is the artist who created, they were so happy. They said, we wonder who made this work. It's so interesting. Eventually, they were very happy to see the artist. This is another my favorite project called Freedom. I think it's one of the best works they've done. It's very simple. It's just a very powerful water hose tight on the ceiling, and they renovated the gallery, the whole gallery, put the metal walls so the water will not damage the wall. And then they have some safe spot behind the wall. People can watch it. And when the show started, they just used this water pump to pump the water from the hose. Just let the horse move freely, so it's called the Freedom. and they made such noisy, and there's a move, the water attacked the wall, and all this sound and the move. It's really interesting to watch. I hope this video can work easy. Yeah, we didn't get the sound, but you can see the movement. The next project called the Hong Kong Intervention. This was the start at 2009, but also it was showing at the Sydney Biennial last year. It's quite interesting project dealing with many normal people on the street. Like if you have chance to go to Hong Kong, every weekend you will see those Filipino house worker. They spend time, spend their vacation on the street. You see them in the city square, some park. All these women or some men, mostly from Philippines. They work in Hong Kong in different household. So when they have these weekends, they all come to this like a public space to enjoy themselves, chat with each other, share the food, talking about the story, their family. So this is the picture of those house workers in Hong Kong. And artists invite 100 Filipinos, ask them to take picture of themselves on the bag. Someone can take picture. But you have to take another picture is give them kind of, there's a toy grenade to like a small bomb to put in the space where you live or you work. So you choose, the worker, they choose any space, any kind of arrangement, but you need to put this grenade like this. The woman put in the ground with the animal, another put on the window near the Buddha statues. So each artist doing, each workers making different choices, but are also in their house. So artists display the whole 100 pair of pictures. This became very controversial because in Hong Kong, those Filipino workers had kind of a tension with their bosses, family, the people who they work for. There was some rape cases, or there's some abusing cases, and there's also some Filipino workers strongly against the government immigration law, which not allow them to get permanent resident status, even they work in Hong Kong for many, many years. So there was a lot of political issues, social issues behind this. So the work, when they show in Hong Kong, even last year showed in Sydney, there caused a lot of a discussion about this, why artists would do it. Does this work invade the privacy of those workers and their bosses? Because you put this grenade in their house, and you took picture of the house, all this private space was exposed to the public. So there was many issues related to this work. And this is an installation and the performance did in 2011 called The Teenager. It was kind of interesting sculpture. Also, there's a hyper-realistic replica of human beings sitting like a family sitting there, but their body look like real. Their clothes exactly the same as we wear, but the head, instead of a real head, they have this huge stone. Everyone has a stone head. And when this work showing in Korea, in the Arario Gallery, the high artist hired this teenager play soccer in this room. So all the time, the young boy was playing, and make the very interesting contrast with this, people sitting there. In October, I went to Yuan and Peng Yu studio. I saw them, they're working on another group of sculpture, the similar idea, but they haven't decided where to show. So when they explained to us why they made this, they said that one of the ideas is they believe in, now they are in their 40s. They are not young artists anymore. So they think about the aging. When you getting old, what do you do? And they believe when the people getting older, their mind, they're getting kind of a very stubborn kind of you don't, you cannot accept a new idea. You become very kind of a traditional, or it just look like a kind of a stone compared to the movement the young kids made, So that's kind of the question about the life, about the aging, about how to develop your mind, and what influences us. All these questions about our behavior and action. And this is the recent exhibition they did in the Highworth Gallery in London. This is called I Didn't Notice What I'm Doing. This is a installation group of installation of a different projects. One of this pillar, this is an early work called the civilization pillar. It's made of a human fat. They went to the plastic surgeon clinic to collect those fat. When people want to become slim, you will go to the clinic. They will take off your fat. And the artists collected them, then put together, build this huge pillar called the civilization pillar. And then behind there was two animals. They look like similar, but they are not. One is kind of a dinosaur in the early time, and another is there's a rhinoceros on the back is a modern animal. So this animal actually doesn't have anything in common, but you look their appearance, their skin, their horn, those make you think they have connection. So the artist's question about the human's conception, when you look at this, you have no scientific facts behind that to help you make decision, but your intuition is say that they are similar animal, but they are not. So they play, the artists play with human beings, like a decision-making process, and using this interesting comparison. No doubt Sun Yuan and Peng Yu are two of the most controversial artists from China. In early time, the criticism focused on the extreme materials artists use in their work, like human body, animals. Later on, the discussion related to artists dealing with basic social issues such as life, death, human condition, and behaviors. But the artist couple don't think they are so complicated or difficult. They give their most recent installation, the exhibition in London, they called a very interesting title called I Didn't Notice What I Am Doing. So it actually gives us a hint to analyze and understand their thought. Peng Yu and Sun Yuan have always been interested in raising questions about how people think and behave. No matter what they do, they have tried to stimulate the subliminal reaction that determines human behavior and influence our everyday decision-making process. Peng Yu and Sun Yuan's work often represented as a paradox on the constant exploration for the dichotomies of black and white, the reality and the fiction, the visible and the hidden. Their work usually doesn't provide a moral or an answer, but invite viewers to participate, to find the meaning for them behind the appearance. Peng Yu and Sun Yuan belong to a new generation, or we call it the second generation, of contemporary artists from China, who never thought Chineseness would be an issue. Once in an interview, Peng Yu mentioned that many Chinese artists, both overseas and at home, have been playing so-called China card in their artistic practice. She doesn't support this, but she is not against it either. The question is, she said, the question is not about what cards you play. It's how to play, and can you play well? Peng Yu and Sun Yuan also don't like to be labeled as extraordinary or experimental artist. Sun Yuan said, no matter from where I started, I want to stay there. Everything followed the chance, like buying lottery. You cannot decide what a better choice is. The only thing you are certain is what you choose this time. It is this attitude made Sun Yuan and Peng Yu differentiate with many famous brand fellow Chinese artists. Works by Sun Yuan and Peng Yu are always fresh, unpredictable, and astonishing. They have no hesitation to, quote, test established standard of ethics and aesthetics, as David Eliot once described. But they are not angry anarchists or dissident. They know what they like and dislike in this ever-changing world, and they play their cards very well. Brutal but gentle at the same time, serious but playful, provocative but stimulating, confrontational but encouraging. These are what I saw from Peng Yu and Sun Yuan's work. And I can never guess what they will bring to us next time. Thank you.
How does the Chinese government feel about their work?
Actually, as I said, that they are not dissidents. Their work, you could call them political, like freedom. What is the freedom? Why? But they're not very, how do you say, closely related to any political issues, or their work not like some other fellow artists that they have very obvious criticism to Chinese authority. So I haven't heard any problem for them, from the government side. Besides the early show, like the exhibition used live animals, had dead body, there was many criticism from the authority. But in the last 10 years, I think they work fine. There's no problem at all.
What happens to these works after an exhibition or a show? Are they collected by museums?
I don't know exactly, but some works collected by museums, by private collectors, but some work is still in their studio. So it depends. I think like the old man houses, those work collected by someone, and even the freedom. It was once was proposed by a collector, private collector. They want to buy it, but I don't know even eventually they made a deal or not. They do have their work collected by other institutions. That's how they can continue to work. They get the support by selling those work.
I was wondering, it seems that these two artists, they got a lot of chance to travel around and display the work in different countries and exhibitions. And it seems that quite often their works are the way or the content they make it is specific to the political or social conditions in that country or maybe in that particular exhibition as well. So I was wondering in your conversation with these two artists, whether you know how they did research into the specific maybe social and political conditions of the countries or places that they were going to display their work, and like the approach or how much time they take to make their work even more specific.
Yeah, I think that's the question is very hard to answer. I tried not only Yuan and Peng Yu, and I talked to, I interviewed many artists. I talked to them, especially those artists working in other countries, like the artists in Paris or in the States. And because I always curious, so how could they create work which is so closely to the social issues or political issues of this country, and how could they understand the situation? I think, first you have to give a credit to those artists that are very smart, and they have quite wide knowledge on the things going on in the world. And they read, they watch, they study a lot. And also, they're very quickly understand, the things behind that, behind the event happen in different culture. I think, this, when they make their choice, did they have a reference or did they have someone help, which we don't know. But I think the only answer was for this is where we call the artist talent. Why they are not not everybody can do it. It's because they are brilliant. They understand things quickly, and then they can really grasp things, from even from distance or in a very short time. I think that's where their talent and ability are.
I have a kind of follow-up question to that, because I was wondering about the angels, and the angel makes a lot of sense in Rome, where it's going to be painted on every surface. Does that image resonate at all in China? Do you guys have angels?
Yeah, in China, and I didn't. I don't think that work show in China before. People, of course, they saw the images and they understand angel from Western the Christianity or this Western culture, but I think the artists when they create work, they do make sense of, in which location, what do they want to do. There was one work I didn't show it here. It's about, it was a project that they proposed to the Liverpool Biennial a few years ago. There was a 4 dead men, like an old man, but they're dead, not like those old people's home. It's a dead people. They tried to put these 4 dead people in a pond, in a, like near this museum in Liverpool. But then people, the local police and authority thought those 4 old dead people kind of symbolized the Beatles, because Beatles are their hero in that city. And so when they saw this, why this 4, like a Caucasian man, all dead, and then the number 4 is the same number of the Beatles. So actually there was a big kind of a debate about should they allow to show this work. Eventually the city banned this work, didn't allow them to show as they planned. So instead, the artists put these 4 dead bodies in a truck and driving through the city. But you ask the artists, do you really relate it? This work relate to Beatles? They never give you an answer. But I think underneath they do. Of course, why there are 4 people? Why you want to put in this city and with this? There is some kind of a connection there. But so when artists they were invited to a show, they always make their research and find what would be more challenging to do, and they made those work. And we have to also give credit to those curators or directors of museums. Even those work are so controversial, but they still allow them to exhibit.
What happened to freedom at the Hayward Gallery? It was going to be part of the show, wasn't it?
The water hose? I don't know that was in Hayward Gallery. Was it?
Never mind. It wasn't, but I'd heard it was supposed to be part of the show.
Oh. Yeah, and unfortunately I didn't see the show, so I only can tell you from the images we have. I didn't see this work exhibited there. And some work actually exhibited later is not the original work, like the dogs, fighting dogs. They show a video because it's so complicated to organize. I don't know where they found the sponsorship. It was very expensive in China to hire, not rent the dogs, but they have to hire professional people to take care of dogs. They have to feed the dog and even massage the dog, to let them strong and ready to fight.
You mentioned that you and son Yuan and Peng Yu, you studied at the same university?
Yes.
And even under the same teacher, is that correct?
Yeah, the same art academy, and Peng Yu, we had the same teacher. Yeah, but not same time.
Yeah. So, but like 30 years difference.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you talk what's one of the main differences between, the culture in which you were studying, and the culture in which these artists were studying?
When I was a student there, in the academy mostly trained as a socialist, realistic style, and our teacher was trained by a Russian artist. So he's a very good painter. He had this traditional oil painting style with a little bit modern touch, like a color or brush stroke. So it was very good, and we learned a lot from him. So in 1960s, actually, the school, it was very much limited to, this is just one painting style. You learn from your teacher, and you do painting. There is never heard about installation or conceptual art, or even videos, photo. Those are not allowed. But Peng Yu, when they went to the school, it was late 1980, early 90s. The whole art scene is already changed in China. And outside of school, there are many experimental artists, working in different media. As I said, there is an underground show. And also they had access to the information from outside. They had a chance to see Western art and, contemporary artists' exhibitions, even not the original work, but there is a lot of information. So at that time, the Professor Zhang, still teaching, he was teaching paintings, just as 30 years ago, the same thing. And the Peng Yu was a good painter. So he really liked Peng Yu. He said, "You're very smart, very talented girl," and I liked her paintings. But then, after she graduated from school, she didn't continue to paint, and suddenly she became artist, working with the animals, or making those installations. So the professor always regrets, said, "Oh, you should keep painting," and he's still, now is very active. I mean, even he's now 80 years old. But I think the art school provides the environment for the student where they are not only learned from their teacher, but also you learned from library, from your schoolmates, and from, the whole art environment. So I think, the timing is so different. At our time, we didn't have any chance to see anything besides socialism, the socialist realism. But the Peng Yu, their time, is the door is open, and the school is an open campus. They still respected their teacher, but I think they didn't learn more from the life, from their, the things surrounding them.
In your presentation, we saw a transition from the use of live animals into more of this sort of static, artificial, hyper-realist human form. I'm wondering if you've spoken to the artists about that transition and why it didn't sort of follow a trajectory from the use of live animals to human performance or performers.
Many artists are told you have to keep your style, so you will be recognized, by the certain style. You have to work on that style for a little while, so people will not forget you. But the Zheng and Peng Yu are very different artists. They, I think, from very beginning, they believe their intuition from their heart. And they, as many interview I read, they take chances. They say that we have no direction. So even you ask them why you change from live animal to installation, why you start to do this kind of a human replica, sculpture. They said that we just felt we want to do. That's very hard to explain. Maybe there's something stimulate this idea, or they saw there's a chance, and in their creative process, actually, they made the decision many times just according to the situation. They kind of adjust themselves. Like I said, the Beatles, this idea is they couldn't show in the pond, in the water. Then they put in a trunk to drive around. And some similar things, like one place they want to show there's an old man's house, but then some shipping problem. The 13 figures didn't arrive. And so they just make another project installation called, I forgot the name, English name, the empty space or whatever. They just have 13 wheelchairs without anybody there. So the wheelchairs moving around, but there is nobody there. So it become another very interesting project. So I think that they really, as what they say, that they just follow their intuition to make those works. And of course, the impact from outside always play a kind of a role. Like I said, in the early time in late 1990s, there's a young Brits really influenced Chinese artists. Why they choose dead body, all these things, because they saw that, from from the media, from the a magazine, they saw those young Brits using those bodies to do a show. So it becomes fashionable. And all the young artists are influenced by the fashion. What is new, what is exciting. But then when they grow up, they find that their own way, then they change. They move to another step. I think that's their case is the same.
It's very interesting to hear you say like the artists, they don't feel being Chinese is as an issue. So that's very interesting for me to see their work. All those human figure or the person face is Caucasian or some other like Middle East, but none of them are actually Asian, or some Asian but not typically Chinese. Do you think they just purposely avoid to be labeled as Chinese, or it's their way to be known as an so-called international artist?
Yeah, this is a question sometimes that people raised about why, especially in the last few years, they're doing this non-Chinese figures. But I think that's only the artists themselves can answer. One explanation of this is we saw all these exhibitions outside of China, in Europe or in other countries, in Russia, in other countries. So as I say, when artists start to make proposal, they think about the location, how to reach the local audience. If you do something totally foreign, for those audience, maybe, they just look exotic, but not really touched. This is many early kind of Chinese artists, they face the situation is that they exhibit what we call the China card. They show a lot of Chinese symbols, images, and the non-Chinese viewers, they're very interesting. They're exotic, but they couldn't really understand it. So I think Peng Yu and Zheng Shengtian, they try in different way. They really like their work. Like there's a Hong Kong intervention. They really want their works to be interweaved with the local audience. And that they want to get the response from their work. So they try to choose some such subject they believe will be understood or will be questioned. But in any case, there will be a dialogue built through the viewing of their work. I think that's what they do.
Then following about that question is, do you think which way will be the right way for contemporary Chinese artists to go? Is more neutral or still playing we are Chinese type of card?
There's nothing right and wrong. I think in general, the art, I believe, you cannot say this is right or wrong. You know, this is not mathematics or artwork is your own expression. The only thing you can say is true or not true. You know, I think artists, we judge artists, we see their work. We think if it's true from your heart, from really you want to express, then that's the good work. You know, we can understand or we can read this work. So what you ask is, what is the right direction or what is the best way to do? I don't think there is an answer for that. I think every artist should, just like Yuan and Peng Yu, try to do what your heart tells you to do. And then your work may be successful, maybe not, but this is your choice. As the Sun Yuan said, you know, you will never know what is the best. When you like buying lottery, you don't know which is the best number, right? You only know is what you choose right now, this time. I think that's the answer for your question.
Hi. Sorry, my English is not fluently. Actually, I remember 20 years ago, one Chinese artist showed a real body of a baby in Venice Biennale. So you said this artist focused on controversial issue, but for me, it is kind of typical Chinese art because my image of Chinese is that Chinese don't care about the importance of life. Sorry, because it means many Western people, they think the life is really important, but how can I explain? Actually, I saw their artwork in Korea. That time, my friend said, this artwork become possible because the artist is Chinese. So, have you ever think this kind of artwork make this negative image of China strengthen? Correct?
Yeah, maybe I can understand what you ask. You know, first, as I remember, in Venice Biennale, there was no dead baby showing. It was probably other show. There was one exhibition in Beijing before that. In Venice Biennale, there was one artist who showed dead baby body in Beijing. But in Venice, he showed a kind of a very interesting animals. But anyway, I think the artists, as I said, a lot of make their personal choice by, you know, selecting what material and what subject that they do. When they work, they probably hardly to imagine their work will represent a country or a culture. It's just represent themselves. And also, it's, you know, because a different time, as I said, you know, late 1990s, it's not only Chinese art using dead body or human parts, you know, to be part of their work, but also British artists and artists in other countries. We saw many examples. And so there was a trend during that time, you know, artists try to shock people, you know. They will show ugliness, They will show some brutal images. But then after a while, they change. You know, just like people in other field, you know, when you were young, you always have a courage to try new things or try to make surprises. But when you grow older, then your thoughts change, and the way you want to express yourself very different with like 10 years, 15 years ago. So I won't say any artist, when you are making your work and you think, does this work make a negative image for my country or make a positive image for my country? I think that's too big kind of a imagination for the artist. They probably only think, you know, if this work will make negative image of myself, then I won't do it. But probably those artists who using live animals or dead bodies, they think those work will make positive image for themselves, not to the country, but for themselves, will make them become very kind of aggressive avant-garde artists. So that's why they made that choice. All right. Thank you very much.